In the small town of Abilene, Texas, lived a man named Brian Bethel. Brian was a journalist who had a penchant for the peculiar and the unexplained. Little did he know that his own life would soon become entangled in a chilling urban legend known as the Black-Eyed Children. It was a warm summer evening in 1996 when Brian found himself in a familiar spot, the parking lot of a local movie theater. He had just parked his car and the setting sun cast a golden hue over the lot, making it look like almost picturesque. Brian had plans to catch a movie that night, but he needed to drop off a payment for an upcoming bill first. As he sat in his car, he went over the numbers in his head, double-checking to ensure everything was in order. The theater's marquee advertised the latest blockbuster hits, and the anticipation of an enjoyable evening was out, palpable in the air. Little did Brian know that this mundane evening would soon turn into a haunting experience that would stay with him for the rest of his life. Suddenly, his reverie was interrupted by a light tapping on his car window. Startled, he turned to see two young girls standing there, their presence shrouded in the dim light of the parking lot. The sight of these children sent a shiver down Brian's spine. The girls were unlike he had ever seen. Their eyes were the most unsettling feature of all. Their entire eyes were black, including the whites devoid of any color or emotion. It was as if their eyes were empty voids, absorbing all the light around them. Brian hesitated to roll down the window, but he eventually cracked it open just enough to speak to the girls. He was met with a polite, rehearsed request that would send chills down his spine. They asked for a ride, explaining that they needed to get home. Brian's instincts screamed at him to drive away, to escape this unnerving encounter, but he found himself frozen in place. The girls, who appeared to be around 12 years old, continued their pleas. They told him that they didn't have any money and needed a ride back to their house to retrieve it. It was a strange and implausible request, especially at this time of the evening. But as they spoke, Brian noticed that their tone was eerily monotone, as if they were reading from a script. As minutes passed, Brian's fear began to mount. He could feel it in the pit of his stomach, a gnawing unease that refused to go away. The girls became increasingly insistent, their insistence bordering on aggression. They repeatedly asked to be led into the car, but something deep within Brian told him that he should not comply. He quickly came up with an excuse, explaining that he had an important appointment and couldn't give them a ride. The moment he uttered those words, a change came over the girls. Their dark, lifeless eyes seemed to grow even darker, and their demeanor turned ominous. It was as if they knew he was lying, and their persistence became almost unbearable. They pleaded for him to let them in, to take them to their destination, all while their eyes continued to bore into his soul. The dread Brian felt was suffocating, and he knew that he needed to escape the situation. With a surge of determination, he rolled up his window, his heart pounding, and hastily drove away. As he glanced back in his rearview mirror, he saw the two girls standing in the same spot, their lifeless eyes still fixed on him. Their eerie presence had sent a chill down his spine that he couldn't shake. Brian Bethel made it to his appointment, but the encounter with the Black-Eyed Children haunted him for years to come. He couldn't help but wonder about the true nature of the girls he had encountered. Who were they, and what did they want? The encounter left him with an enduring sense of unease and fear, which he would carry with him throughout his life. In the years that follows, Brian's account of the Black-Eyed Children would become one of the earliest and well-known stories of this urban legend. It was a tale that would resonate with countless others who claimed to have had their own chilling encounters. As the legend of the Black-Eyed Children grew, so did the number of reported incidents. People from all walks of life began sharing their own stories of unsettling encounters with children whose eyes were entirely black. The legend transcended geographic boundaries and spread across the internet like wildfire. Online forums and blogs dedicated to the supernatural became a hub for these stories. Ordinary individuals who had never considered themselves believers in the paranormal began sharing their own experiences. It was as if the legend of the Black-Eyed Children had taken a life of its own, and the fear it inspired was contagious. One of the recurring themes in these accounts was the notion that the black-eyed children always appeared in isolated or quiet settings. It was as if they thrived on the element of surprise, lurking in the shadows until the perfect moment to approach their unwitting victims. One such account came from a woman named Sarah, who lived in a remote rural area. She described an incident that occurred one evening while she was sitting in her front porch, gazing at the starry night sky. The air was still, and the only sound was the chirping of crickets. It was a peaceful moment until she heard a soft, eerie voice. Sarah turned her head and saw two young children standing at the edge of her property, their eyes as black as the night. The sight sent a jolt of fear through her, and she felt a strange compulsion to go inside and lock the door. The children, however, continued to just stand there, their eyes fixed on her. They made no attempt to approach her or speak further. Instead, they simply stood there, watching her with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. Sarah remained inside, unable to tear her gaze away from the window as she watched the children linger in the darkness. Sarah's experience was not an isolated one. Similar encounters were reported by individuals who had been alone in their cars, walking home at night, or even in the solitude of their own homes. The black-eyed children seemed to appear when one was most vulnerable, heightening the sense of dread and unease. Another recurring theme in these stories was the notion that those who interacted with the black-eyed children often experienced negative consequences. While the nature of these consequences varied, they added an extra layer of fear to the encounters. Some people reported a feeling of profound sense of dread that lingered long after the encounter, as if they had been marked by the black-eyed children. Others claimed to have fallen ill or experienced a string of bad luck in the days or weeks following their encounter. The fear and anxiety induced by these encounters seemed to cast a long dark shadow over the lives of those who had experienced them. One woman, who chose to remain anonymous, shared her account of an encounter with the black-eyed children at the front door. She described how the children had asked to use her phone to call their parents, and she had allowed them inside. As they entered her home, she noticed their unnaturally black eyes, and a sense of dread washed over her. After they used the phone, the children left her home, but the negative consequences soon followed. She experienced a series of strange and unsettling events, from inexplicable noises in her house to a persistent feeling of being watched. She couldn't shake the fear that the black-eyed children had left something behind, something intangible but malevolent. While many of these accounts are chilling and evoke a deep sense of fear, it's important to remember that the black-eyed children legend remains rooted in the realm of the supernatural and the unexplained. There is no concrete evidence to support the existence of children with entirely black eyes, and many skeptics argue that these stories can often be attributed to psychological factors, sleep paralysis, or the power of suggestion. Nonetheless, the legend of the black-eyed children continues to capture the imagination of many, and it serves as a testament to the enduring power of urban legends and ghost stories. Whether one believes in their existence or not, the tales of these enigmatic and unsettling children persist, a reminder that the unknown and the eerie have the power to send shivers down our spines and keep us looking over our shoulders in the dark of the night.